Namaste, Punarapi Swagatam. Yushmakam Abhyasaha Samyak Chalati iti Asham Karomi. Sincerely hope your practice is progressing well. So in the previous lesson, I introduced you to the dual of the first and second persons, and we just had time to practice the first and second cases for the first person. And in this particular lesson, I'm going to teach you the rest of the forms. So the lecture number 10 will be an introduction of the first person pronoun in the dual form, and this is the part 2 for that. And in this one, we are going to look at the introduction and practice of more of the asmat pronoun in the dvivachanam. There will be a little revision of the dhatu rupas that we've been looking at, and a building of the vocabulary as well. So let's do just a brief revision or a punah smaranam of what we had looked at in our previous session. And we saw that I have this color scheme here because what we realized is that the first two are the same, and the first two were avam, avam. So avam gachavaha, which is the two of us will go. So I'll just make you do a few practice on that, a little bit of practice on that. So avam gachavaha, avam khadavaha, avam, right, likhavaha, avam vadavaha, uttamam. And the other one is avam or now. So we saw it also in the mantra where the now was us in the sense of the object case or the accusative. So we have avam. So saha avam pashyati, saha avam vadati, he's talking to us. Saha avam ahvayati is calling us. Okay, so different ways, but the avam remains the same. So when you encounter it in literature, you have to look at the context in which it is appearing to understand whether it is the first case or the second case. And how would you know? One other indicator you have to know whether it is the first case or not is that you have to look at the verb. So if the verb is conjugated in the dual, then there's a good chance that it is the subject. The avam is the subject there, and the verb often has the vaha in the conjugation form. Often, it's not generalized, but you will often encounter that form associated with the avam. Astu. So let's move on to some more practice of the other forms now. Now moving on to the next one, we see that we have the three cases of the third maya, fourth mahyam, and the fifth mat, which all convert into avabhyam. So you have one word avabhyam to indicate all these three cases. So this particular slide is a practice with maya, and what we see here, I will just indicate how this works because you're already familiar with it. So saha maya saha upavishati, sits with me. Saha avabhyam saha upavishati, saha asmabhihi saha upavishati. So avabhyam and asmabhihi saha upavishati. In the future, what happens? Saha maya saha upavekshyati. In the dual, saha avabhyam saha upavekshyati. Plural, saha asmabhihi saha upavekshyati. Uttamam. Let's do the past tense. Saha maya saha asande na upavishtavan, or upavishtavan. I'll keep the negative out and leave you to practice with that. Next, saha avabhyam saha asande upavishtavan or upavishtvati. And finally, saha asmabhihi saha asande upavishtavan. Uttamam. Now, let's take this form of pratyagatavan, came back. So, gatavan, agatavan, pratyagatavan, went and came back. Saha maya saha pratyagatavan, saha avabhyam saha pratyagatavan, saha asmabhihi saha pratyagatavan. And the last one here that we have in the words on this side, saha maya saha tirthayatrartham, for a tirthayatra or a pilgrim, or you can even make it just yatra as you want, gachati or na gachati, so he goes. Next, saha avabhyam saha tirthayatrartham gachati, saha asmabhi saha tirthayatrartham gachati. Uttamam. Hope you have a feel of that. I'll just like to indicate the second person here so that you are a little, you have a practice of the dual, especially in the simplified past that we have here. So here we have Tvam maya saha upavishasi. Tvam avabhyam saha upavishasi. Tvam asmabhihi saha upavishasi. It will all remain si because the subject is Tvam here. Next, if the subject changes, it becomes a dual thing. What happens? Yuvam maya saha upavisha thaha. Uttamam. Yuvam avabhyam saha upavisha thaha. Yuvam asmabhihi saha upavisha thaha. Uttamam. And I'll just do it also with the past tense because I want you to practice that. So, Tvam maya saha, we've seen upavishtavan, can be van or vati. So what we've seen is that third person, first person, third person, second person, first person. If it is the simplified past as upavishtavan, it doesn't change the way the verb is, verb ends. Alright. But when we use the yuvam, we have to add the dual case. So yuvam maya saha upavishta vantau or vatyau. Next, yuvam avabhyam saha upavishta vantau or vatyau. Finally, yuvam asmabhihi saha upavishta vantau or vatyau. So I just wanted you to present that as, I wanted to present that as well to you so that you can now practice it by yourselves. Astu, pause kurvantu and atra yuyam abhyasam kurutha. Uttamam. So practice a little by yourselves. Then you can follow along with me. So here we have the mahyam. So we are taking the dative case here. So the mahyam, to me, which also becomes avabhyam. Let's see how it is put into application. So saha mahyam or me vastram prayachati, gives me cloth. Now you can replace vastram with anything else that you are fond of or whatever other vocabulary that you would like to put in practice there. Next, saha avabhyam or now vastram prayachati. Saha asmabhyam vastram prayachati. Now I would like to also introduce the other ones here because the verb dadati conjugates a little differently than the ones that we are familiar with. We have seen it before, but there is never any harm in repeating the ones that are a little tougher to remember. So here we have saha mahyam vastram pradadati, te mahyam vastram pradadati. Now let's do it with the avabhyam. Te avabhyam vastram pradadati, because there are two of them. Okay, no, sorry, there are many of them who are giving te pradadati. Next, let's look at the tvam here. So tvam mahyam vastram pradadasi. Tvam avabhyam, so you're giving it to the two of us, vastram pradadasi. Yuyam mahyam vastram, or sorry, tvam asmabhyam, to us, vastram pradadasi. So tvam will always take pradadasi. Now what happens when the subject is dual? Let's do the practice for that. Yuvam mahyam vastram pradatha. You notice the visarga at the end of the tha. Yuvam avabhyam or now vastram pradatha. Then yuvam asmabhyam, to us, vastram pradatha. So Sanskrit really requires the mind to be very clear. You have to keep in mind who is the subject, which person is it, how many of them are doing the action, because the verb will change accordingly. Now, unlike in many other cases where the object or the receiver, to whom you are giving it, it doesn't matter so much whether it's a singular or a dual or a plural. In Sanskrit, it does matter. So in your mind, you have to hold these words very, very clearly and do the necessary computation grammatically in order to be correct in your expression. So that is that. And then we have the final with the yuyam. So yuyam mahyam vastram pradattha without the visarga. Yuyam avabhyam vastram pradattha. Yuyam asmabhyam vastram pradattha. Got it? And then we have just another interesting word. So I've added a little more vocabulary. So ruchiram pustakam aneshyati. So saha mahyam, for me, ruchiram pustakam, interesting book, aneshyati, will bring. Nayati, to take, anayati, to bring, and aneshyati, will bring in the future. Saha avabhyam ruchiram, interesting, pustakam aneshyati. Saha asmabhyam ruchiram, pustakam aneshyati. And then you can do the permutations and combinations, and that's why we have the ... Astu. Let's get on to the next one. And here you see it's all in blue. And we had seen that with the dative case, you also use it to indicate what you like. But it is only with mahyam and that. So, mahyam vishwam brahmitum rochate. I love to travel the world. Okay, so vishwam brahmitum rochate. Or parvataha, here we have parvataha rochante. I love the mountains. Mahyam parvataha rochante. Next, avabhyam, or now, vishwam brahmitum rochate. Why is the rochate in the singular? Because what do you like? Vishwam brahmitum, that's in the singular. And why does it become parvataha rochante? Because what you like is in the plural. So parvataha rochante. Astu. So this is a very oft used expression. And finally, asmabhyam, or naha vishwam brahmitum rochate, and asmabhyam, or naha parvataha rochante. Uttamam. So I think you're getting a hang of this. Practice it some more, replace words freely, and you will be more confident with this. Moving on, we've seen now we are into the third case where the word avabhyam is used, which is in the fifth or the ablative with mat. So saha mat prashansam prapnoti, gets praise from me. Saha avabhyam prashansam prapnoti, gets praise from the two of us. And saha asmat prashansam prapnoti. Alright, that's the gist of it there. What I would like to do is to take you through the thwam forms with each of this, because you can practice with the te by yourselves. So the green there is something that you are now much more familiar with. Let's do it with the thwam ones. So thwam mat adhikam. Let's take another adhikam prapnoshi. So you get more than me. Tvam avabhyam adhikam prapnoshi. You're getting more than me, more than the two of us. Avabhyam. Tvam asmat adhikam prapnoshi. You're getting more than all of us. Now the next one. Yuvam mat kinchit prapnuthaha. So you are getting less. The two of you are getting less than me. Mat. Yuvam avabhyam, from the two of us, kinchit prapnuthaha, you're getting less, and yuvam asmat kinchit prapnuthaha. Clear? And the last one with the plural yuyam. So yuyam mat kinchit prapnutha, you get a little from me, me. All of you avabhyam kinchit prapnutha. And finally, yuyam asmat kinchit prapnutha. Got that? So that is the practice there. But what I'd like to do with you is to go down the third column. So mat prashansam prapnoti, gets praise from me, or mat adhikam, or sorry, just I'll repeat that. Mat prashansam or nindam, criticism, prapnoti. Avabhyam prashansam or nindam prapnoti, from the two of us gets that, and asmat prashansam nindam prapnoti. We're keeping saha as the subject here. Next, shrunoti. So you hear more or less than me. Saha mat adhikam or kinchit shrunoti. Avabhyam adhikam kinchit shrunoti. Asmat adhikam kinchit shrunoti. Next, you can also use this for to walk. So, chalati. Saha mat shighram, fast, or mandam chalati, walks faster or slower than me. Chalayati, drives faster or slower than me, or avabhyam, the two of us. So this mat, when you use it in this case, I'm just marking it all there. So what happens is when you're using it in this case, it means mat here means than. So than me, you walk faster or slower. Chalayati, you drive faster or slower. And karyam karoti, works faster or slower. Similarly, you can say saha mat sthulaha, fat, or krishaha, thin asti. Saha mat sthulaha or avabhyam, sthulaha krisha asti. Saha asmat sthulaha krishaha asti. Now, if you're talking of the yuvam, you see here we have the dual case. You have the dual case here. So, yuvam mat sthulau, and then sthaha, it will have to go there. Next, yuvam, you can say mat or avabhyam, any of them, krishau sthaha, and the plural of course will go here and it will go in there. Okay, so practice this, and just before we close, I'd just like you to take you once through the verbs here. So, prapnoti, repeat, saha prapnoti, te prapnuvanti, tvam prapnoshi, yuvam prapnutah, yuyam prapnutha. Uttamam. Moving on to the next one. Saha shrunoti, te shrinvanti, here, tvam shrunoshi, yuvam shrunutah, yuyam shrunutha. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is the mama or me and mai. And here we have avayoho, the same word. So similarly, you have saha mama kalyanam ichhati, saha avayoho kalyanam, which also means mangalam, shubham, they're all synonymous. Saha avayoho kalyanam ichhati, saha asmakam kalyanam ichhati. Uttamam. And then here you have saha mama adhyapakan janati, saha avayoho or now adhyapakan means teachers janati, saha asmakam or naha adhyapakan janati. And just the verb janati becomes te jananti, tvam janasi, yuvam janitha, yuyam janitha. So getting a hang of that as well. Alright. Here you can see this whole part is in brown because they go together. So, saha mama krite karyam karishyati or dasyati. In the dual it is saha avayoho or now krite karyam karishyati or dasyati. And in the plural it is saha asmakam krite karyam karishyati or dasyati. The other option is saha mama krite or saha mama chitram samapitavan. He finished the picture for me. Saha avayoho chitram samapitavan. Finally, saha asmakam chitram samapitavan. Uttamam. And the next one is with janakena saha. So I've kept the dot 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 so that you can fill in correctly. So the moment you see a saha, you have to make it janakena, and amba becomes ambaya. Okay, so saha mama janakena saha khadati, he eats with my father. Saha Avayoho Janakena Saha Khadati, eats with our father, two of us. Saha Asmakam Janakena Saha Khadati. Got that? Let's move on to the last one. Saha Karyalayam Avashyam Agamishyati. Saha Mamma Karyalayam. We'll come to my office definitely. Saha Avayoho Karyalayam Avashyam Agamishyati. And Saha Asmakam Karyalayam Avashyam Agamishyati. Definitely come to our office. And then you can play around with all these possibilities with the Tvam, Yuvam and Yuyam. Astu. Let's move on to the last of the cases here, and here we have Saha Mai. So Mai means in me, the locative, which is also Avayoho in the dual case. So Saha Mai Vishwasam Karoti, believes in me. Saha Avayoho, in the two of us, Vishwasam Karoti. Saha Asmasu Vishwasam Karoti. Next one, we have the same one with Pritihi, but what we will do this time is we will take the second one in brown that you see. And when you see it in brown, like we've seen it before, it says the what you have is in the first case. So, Tasya Mai Pritihi Asti. So, of him in me there is a love, Pritihi or affection. Tasya Avayoho Pritihi Asti. Tasya Asmasu Pritihi Asti. So, his affection is in us. That's what it literally translates as. Moving on to the next few words. So, there are a few new words here, and I was thinking let's just do it. These words are actually formed down here. All the blue ones go together. So, Mai Daya Asti or Nasti. So, there is compassion in me or not. Avayoho Daya Asti or Nasti. Asmasu Daya Asti Nasti. So, Bhayam Kutra Asti? Bhayam Mai Asti. Next, or Bhayam Mai Nasti. Next, in the dual, Bhayam Kutra Asti? Bhayam Avayoho Asti. And in the plural, Bhayam Kutra Asti? Bhayam Asmasu Asti, or ideally Nasti. Next, Sadgunaha. Gunaha, qualities. Sat Gunaha, good qualities. Sadgunaha Kutra Santi? Sadgunaha Mai Santi. Sadgunaha for two people. Kutra Santi? Sadgunaha Avayoho Santi. Next, Sadgunaha Kutra Santi, plural. Sadgunaha Asmasu Santi. And finally, Durgunaha Kutra Na Santi? Mai Na Santi. Durgunaha Mai Na Santi. If it was two, Durgunaha Avayoho Na Santi, or Avayoho Durgunaha Na Santi. Finally, Asmasu Durgunaha Na Santi. So, what you also see here is that you can mix and match the order of the words. You're not bound by a singular linear construction of the sentence. So, huge amount of flexibility, complexity, and yet system underlying the grammar of the Sanskrit language. So, let's put that all together. Here we have in the singular it is aham, mam, maya, mahyam, in this case mat, mama, mai. Now, what happens to the dual? It's really brilliant and easy. So, avam, avam, avabhyam, avabhyam, in this case to me. So, avabhyam to us and avabhyam from the two of us. Then avayoho of the two of us and avayoho. So, avam, avam, avabhyam, 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 avayoho, avayoho. Let's do the plural here. Vayam, asman, asmabhi, asmabhya, asmabhyam, asmat, asmakam, asmasu. Astu. So, let us look at the application of what we have learned thus far in this verse from the Gita, and this verse is from the last chapter and it's towards the end of the chapter as well. So, here Krishna is saying Adhyeshyate cha ya imam Dharmyam samvadam avayoho jnana yajnena tenaham ishtasyamiti me matihi. So what is he saying here? He's saying adhyeshyate, and he who shall study what? Chaya imam. Imam is the same as etam. It's the masculine word in the second case here. So chaya imam, who shall study this sacred discourse. Dharmyam samvadam avayoho. So did you recognize the word? Uttamam. So it is avayoho here. So what is the combination here? It is samvadam plus avayoho. So samvadam becomes samvadam mavayoho. And here it is samvadam. Alright, samvadam avayoho. So here you see that the sandhi is happening at this point here. Samvadam avayoho. The words get combined. And what is it, avayoho? Hour. So, and he who shall study this sacred discourse of hours. So, hours here is actually indicating the sixth case for the first person in the dual. Samvadam avayoho. What happens to such a person? Jnana yajnena te naham. So, jnana yajna is the sacrifice of knowledge. Jnana yajnena. Tena jnana yajnena aham. So, te naham, you break it up into tena plus aham. Becomes te naham, and then ishtaha syam. So, there is another sandhi there. Te naham ishtaha syam iti. So, there is another sandhi over there. Syam iti me matihi. So, by him I shall be worshipped with the sacrifice of knowledge. That is what Krishna says here. So, I'd like you to repeat this particular verse after me. Adhyeshyate chaya imam dharmyam samvadamavayoho jnana yajnena te naham ishtasyamiti me matihi. Alright, just a small note there is when you are pausing in the middle of a sandhi, then you are required to do the sandhi. So you have jnana yajnena te naham ishtasyamiti me matihi. So because I was pausing there for you to repeat after, I broke the sandhi there. Otherwise we are required to do it together. So it would be jnana yajnena te naham ishtasyamiti me matihi. Alright, so again very big learning there for us, who says that what is it that the Gita has to offer to us? It has to offer this whole possibility of understanding oneself better through and of approaching the Supreme Divinity through knowledge. So let us look at what Sri Aurobindo, the seer, poet and philosopher, he has to say here. He says that the Gita is a gate opening on the whole world of spiritual truth and experience, and the view it gives us embraces all the provinces of the supreme region. It maps out, but it does not cut up or build walls or hedges to confine our vision. And once you look at the Gita, you will recognize this statement that Sri Aurobindo is making, that what it allows us to do is to get clarity on the different processes that are within our mind and our emotional being. And if we are able to get clarity on that, it will enable us to lead much better lives and result in our greater good. Kalyana Mastu, may well-being happen, may well-being be yours. So you have seen all the different forms of the Asmat in the dual form. So do practice it, and like I said, find a partner, find a buddy with whom you can practice spoken Sanskrit, and that will give you a great opportunity. If you have another person, together you can really practice this dual case. So with this, Dhanyavadaha, Punar Milamaha.